Both of us have cabinets that are 50% women for the first time in history. Even if you don't agree, guys, I'd stand up. Both of us have cabinets that are 50% women for the first time in history.
But Joe, what is a woman? How do you even know? How many transgender women? How many trans people in your cabinet? Trudeau and Biden's. It's not very diverse. Listen to this. Stand up, men.
Even if you don't agree, guys, I'd stand up.
Even if you don't agree, guys, I'd stand up. Why? Just understand also what's going on here, and I'm going to bring up a tweet afterwards because some people are confused as to why this is offensive. Let's play it one more time.
Both of us have cabinets that are 50% women for the first time in history. Even if you don't agree, guys, I'd stand up.
Tyranny cloaks itself in benevolence, and so does incompetence, and so does corruption. Can you imagine this buffoon between Joe Biden and who's the other one? Justin Trudeau. Not just buffoons. Sent by email. Just now. I forgot to send Barnes the link. That's why I was late. They're not just buffoons. They're misogynists. And I'm not saying this hyperbolically. I'm not saying this hashtag confession through projection. People seem to have forgotten about Joe Biden's Tara Reade situation. A situation where he was accused of being handsy, sexual improprieties with Tara Reade back in the day. You know, back in the day when it was believe all women, hashtag me too, except when it's Joe Biden. Then people can find a good reason to not believe all women and sorry. And by the way, it's not just that these were allegations. It's like the Harvey Weinstein's best kept secret. Everybody knows, and they don't care because politics and party over country and people. Let me just pull up just a tweet that people seem to have forgotten about from Lisa Bloom, alleged, self-proclaimed, but I'll say alleged, feminist lawyer, Lisa Bloom. I think her mother was Gloria Allred. In fact, I don't think her mother was Gloria Allred. Unless I'm mistaken. Chat, let me know if I'm getting mistaken. I'm pretty sure her mother's Gloria Allred. Back in the day, not just allegations, not just rumorings. It's just unbelievable. Let me just pull up the screen grab of the tweet that shall live. It's still up there, this tweet, by the way. This is Lisa Bloom, feminist lawyer, although she represented Harvey Weinstein. Feminist lawyer talking about Joe Biden. Stand up, men. You got 50% of your cabinets are women. It's more for the sniffing, I guess. I believe you, Tara Reade, vis-a-vis your allegations of sexual misconduct by Joe Biden against you. You have people who remember you told them about this decades ago. Not something made up 30 some odd years later that had never been brought up in the past. Something that was brought up contemporaneously, presumably, or at the very least, proximately near the events at hand. Told about decades ago. We know he is, quote, handsy. You're not asking for money. You've obviously struggled mightily with this. I still have to fight Trump because he said grab him by the P-U-S-S-Y, so I will still support Joe, even though he actually seems to have grabbed somebody by the somethings. Maybe it wasn't the lower regions. Maybe it was just a little honk to pull up Peter Griffin. But I believe you, and I'm sorry. There was a second part to that. How do I go to the close that one? Here we go. The only alternative is Trump, credibly accused of sexual misconduct by over 20. Oh my God. She just said that Tara Reade was right in her accusations of Joe. So Joe Biden, admittedly, by Lisa Bloom's own standards, was handsy, touched this woman improperly. But we've got allegations of misconduct against Donald Trump. But I know yours is true, but yours is only one that I know is true. I've got 20 that are alleged, one of which we're going to be talking about tonight. over 20 women and who openly bragged about sexual assault. Do you remember that whole grab him by the feline line? That people, we're going to close this down, and I'll get back to why Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau are not just hypocrites. They don't just cloak their incompetence in virtue signaling. They cloak their malevolence because Justin Trudeau has his own issue. But just remember, by the way, when the Access Hollywood tape, when you're rich and you're famous, they let you grab them by the... Some people say that Trump was admitting to having done it. It's right down here. He admitted to having it. No, he didn't. And anybody who heard that heard it because they wanted to hear it. And what Donald Trump actually said has proven out probably to be true. When you're rich and you're famous, they'll let you, or you'll get away with it, especially if you want to become president. What Donald Trump said was not, I literally have done this. What he said is that when you're rich and you're famous, and Trump knows a little bit about being rich and famous, they'll let you do it, like they did with Harvey Weinstein, like apparently even Lisa Bloom is prepared to let Joe Biden have it done with Tara Reid. But no, Joe Biden, but he celebrated the fact that, setting aside the fact that he's handsy and he snits little girls, and he allegedly, even by Lisa Bloom's own admission, improperly touched Tara Reid, and she brought it up at the time, but no one listened at the time, even before Joe Biden was going to be president. No. I'm gonna listen to advice from Joe Biden about how to be tolerant of women and how to treat women like equals when I'm not sniffing their hair and touching their children and talking about, and doing bad things. But hold on one second. Justin Trudeau apologized, groping reporter. Yeah, here we go. But no, Justin Trudeau. We'll get to the corruption and the incompetence afterwards. Right now, they're cloaking their own sexual misconduct in benevolence. How could they be guilty of improperly touching women when they are touting the fact that half of their cabinet is women? My goodness. I don't know if they're saying that good for the women or good for them. Trudeau, I can't get rid of this ad. I apologized to reporter behind groping claim. Yes, this is old, people. It's more than 4 years old. Because when he's not dressing in blackface on multiple occasions, he's allegedly improperly touching journalists at music festivals and then apologizing to them, even though he says, I'm confident I didn't do anything wrong, but I apologize for the groping claim. Canadian PM very confident he did not act inappropriately at music festival in 2000. It's amazing what you think you can get away with when you think you're above standard rules of conduct. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has, for the first time, publicly acknowledged that he apologized in 2000 to a reporter who alleged he groped her. But he said he was very confident he did not act inappropriately. Yeah, but you still apologize for having groped a reporter. At the time, the allegation was made. But half the cabinet is women, people, so they're good people. They have to be good people because look how hard they're flexing their virtue signal muscle. Incompetence. Hiding their own sexual misconduct. Tara, what was her name? The lawyer. It was Tara Reid, Lisa Bloom. We knew about it. We've known about it all along. I believe you. But I'm sorry, I got to go fight one alleged groper with one admitted groper. Justin Trudeau, same problem. And then the corruption. Justin Trudeau's cabinet, penetrated by the WEF, taking, I won't call it bribe money, but taking money in the hundreds of thousands to millions from the Chinese Communist Party, not looking into warnings from his own intelligence that one of the members of his cabinet is literally, if not potentially, a CCP plant or received Chinese Communist Party support to get the nomination. And boy, howdy. No. Let's forget about all that. Forget about the groping. Forget about the blackface. Forget about the Aga Khan ethics violation #1. Forget about the fact that Justin Trudeau, because he's such a woman lover, fired Jody Wilson-Raybould, the first Aboriginal woman to the Minister of Justice position. He was so proud about it when he did it, took the virtue signaling credit for having done it because it's the year 2020 or whatever the hell it was, then fired her when she wouldn't be corrupt. Then forget about, that was his second ethics breach. Forget about the We Charity. He treats his mother equally when she gets on the We Charity payroll for giving paid speeches, even though they don't, whatever. But hey, half the cabinet's women. And then some other guy, I don't know who it was. I see Barnes in the back. I better bring him in soon. Hold on. Just one more, Robert. I see one guy on Twitter before he blocked me. Oh, the camera's getting me again. I don't know where it is. I can't find it. Someone blocked me on Twitter. What's the big issue? Like, why do people have such an issue? Nobody complains when it's a room of white men. Nobody says they got there because of what do they call them? When you appoint someone because of ethnicity or gender or whatever, something higher, diversity higher. Nobody complains when it's a room of white men. First of all, even when it happens to be one of those rare occasions when it's a room of white men, although you're presuming gender, you're presuming race, you're presuming a lot of things. The reason why no one objects or makes a stink about it, because nobody comes out and says, look how we hired them because of. Typically, when you see a picture and you may not like the breakdown, no one's touting the fact that these people got hired because of ethnic, racial, gender reasons. It's when people do that people then say, well, holy crap, have these people been hired on skill, capability, and proven track records? Or have they been hired because they are black, female, gay, and whatever? Like Karine Jean-Pierre when she's up on the stump as press secretary and touts her credentials as being the first openly black lesbian press. Hey, you know what I would prefer, just if we're going by, capabilities? Someone who can actually tell the truth, string a sentence together, and answer a question directly. How about that? Okay. Okay, so now, by the way, standard disclaimers. No medical advice, no legal advice, no election fortification advice, but we will be talking about a bunch of stuff here. These things called super chats that you see or Rumble rants, YouTube takes 30% of that. If you don't like that, we are simultaneously streaming on the Rumbles, and I'm going to make sure that we are. I haven't refreshed it. Rumble has these things called Rumble rants. They take 20%, so you can feel better supporting a platform that supports free speech, and more goes to the creator. We are also, let me see, simultaneously streaming on Locals. So what happens as the order of things, and all of you know this, we go off of YouTube onto Rumble and Locals exclusively in about 20 minutes. Then we end it on Rumble and do a little after party at Locals. Okay, now Barnes has been waiting very patiently, and I didn't even get to all of my intro rants, so I'll have more tomorrow for the stream. We got a big one tonight, people. What was I about to say here? I think we're good. Okay. Robert, I'm bringing you in. 3, 2, 1.
All right.
Well, I'll tell you what's very catchy is that book behind your back. What is it, Robert?
It's a book written a few years back called The Deep State, actually a little bit before the terminology became colloquially popular in the Trump era. And it was focused on the efforts to cause a military conflict in China by what this author labeled the administrative state within the national security apparatus at the time, for which we have some relevance to some topics this week. We have 2 bonus topics in addition to the 21 topics. The 2 bonus topics we'll talk about right off the top in response to demand from our Locals board. In response to the board poll on Sunday, topics are the sanctuary laws that were struck down on Second Amendment issues in Missouri and Oregon, and the TikTok issue that has percolating up the Mises Caucus and others, raising concerns that the law intended to limit TikTok's presence due to its purported and alleged Chinese surveillance operation goes way past China or TikTok, unsurprisingly.
Well, you know, Robert, we'll do the list, I guess, real quick. Like,
yes,
we'll start
Here's
with
our
TikTok.
21 topics for tonight for all those in order of chronological sequence after we cover the bonus topics.
But Robert, what are the chances that we get to all 21? Place your bets in the chat, people. What number do we get to tonight? Okay, sorry, Robert, go ahead. So give us the list, and then we're talking TikTok and other stuff, because I got my questions about the TikTok law as well.
All right, yeah. First topic tonight, JP Morgan Chase, Deutsche Bank, and Jeffrey Epstein. We'll do a little bit of deeper dive that had been requested than we discussed previously, when we discussed the motion to dismiss those suits being denied. And it includes the U.S. Virgin Islands suit as well. We got all things Trump, the New York indictment. Is it coming or is it not? Is the prosecutor getting cold feet? The D.C. grand jury is hearing from Trump's own lawyers. How did that happen? Thanks to the D.C. Court of Appeals. And we have in the upcoming April civil trial in New York, E. Jean Carroll, a person I think is a liar and a loon, the suing Donald Trump. That suit is going to be heard in front of an anonymous jury, in front of a judge. If you had any doubts about how much that federal judge hates Trump, just read his anonymous jury
Oh
trial order.
Robert, I read it and I'm like thinking, okay, wait, the first paragraph, I was like, where's it going? Second paragraph, holy crab apples. I might pull it up for some highlights or just talk about it tomorrow, but nuts, like TDS. par excellence.
Completely. Federal judges in the Southern District of New York are not known for being impartial or having intellectual integrity in many cases, in my view. Sex offenders in Rhode Island can now live near your school because they said the school boundary rules are too loose. We'll discuss what a federal judge ruled there. Cops claim a right to anonymity, and we'll discuss a public access dispute in California. Kari Lake, one of the most favorite issue tonight, will be our fifth topic. Big win on signature matches before the Arizona Supreme Court. The Gwyneth Paltrow case, which you'll have to break it down because I know almost absolutely nothing about it, aside from she ran into somebody and said somebody ran into her, and it's in court somehow. We got Missouri versus Biden. This is a case we've talked about frequently, but people don't always know we've talked about it frequently because there are many Missouri versus Biden cases. So we call it the big tech case. Other people call it the Missouri versus Biden case. Major denial of a motion to dismiss in this week. We'll be breaking that case down. DeSantis in the pandemic. He says that if he had been president, he would have fired Anthony Fauci. Well, let's talk about what his record is. Allison Morrow had a lawyer from Florida on about some of the problems going on in Florida right now about pandemic laws in particular. We got Internet Archive, the people that were offering kind of the Kim.com of free library books online has now been denied the right to do so. Is that a fair use or is that a fair violation of the copyright laws? I'll break down the vaccine injury law conference I just attended in Atlanta, Georgia. Of a big Fifth Circuit win, as we forecast, on vaccine mandates out of the Fifth Circuit. And we got an interesting concurrence in that Fifth Circuit that talks about something else. And should the president have the right to fire anybody in the federal government, not just the very few people he's currently given the power to? California wants to have mail-in abortion. Want your abortion? Mail in for California pills to be sent to you and other treatment. Is that a violation of the extradition and full faith and credit clause of the United States Constitution? Afro Man raid. He takes some camera footage of it. The cops aren't happy with that camera footage of it, so they're suing him, claiming that that he's caused them emotional distress for their raid. Employee privacy. When do you have privacy in your place of employment? Big case concerning Butterball. YouTubers sued over FTX, and this is about the whole influencer world. We're seeing more and more lawsuits brought against influencers. Is it a dangerous encroachment on free speech, or are influencers often secret advertisers and promoters with underpayments under the table?
Based on what I know, Robert, I'm going to predict the latter because I'm shocked and appalled to see how many times it happens where it comes up. They endorsed the crypto and didn't announce that they were being paid. It's
absolutely. When is speech criminal? That will be debated this week before the United States Supreme Court in the case about aiding illegal immigrants. Is there a right to a drag show? University of West Texas A&M president doesn't want no drag shows on his college campus. And now he's being sued by a free speech organization about when there's a right to a drag show. This relates to the Tennessee case we talked about, Tennessee passing a law banning drag shows where minors could see them. When is it obscenity? When is it legally protected speech?
I'll know it when I see it, but drag shows by definition are adult content and should be treated as such. And go knock yourself out in Vegas and wherever you want. It's adult content. It was by its origin.
Yep. And the Marvel CEO has been fired. Was she fired because she was too woke? Was she fired because of a contract breach? She's threatening litigation against Disney. A U.S. Marshal is convicted for framing his ex. Where did he get the idea to frame people? Hanging around in the Justice Department too often? And then last but not least, a big Second Amendment win in California. New handguns that effectively had been banned from California for almost 15 years. That law has now been struck down as violating the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution.
Robert, if I may, and indulge me, because I'm going to add one more to the pop-ups that was not on the menu, but I just want to put the CBC and all of Canadian media on blast, and including YouTube, because the hypocrisy and the The madness is stunning. The insult to injury is stunning. I had on the channel a while back Dan Hartman, who is the father of Sean Hartman, who was a 17-year-old kid who died suddenly 33 days after receiving his first Pfizer jab. I'm not going to give any medical advice here because obvious reasons. In fact, I never give medical advice, period. These are just facts. The father applied for the vaccine injury program in Canada. You could presume it's sort of obvious as to the basis for which he was applying for this vaccine injury. The son allegedly was hospitalized, not allegedly, he was hospitalized 4 days or 3 or 4 days after the first jab, black rings under his eyes, went to the hospital. Doctors sent him home with some painkillers, and 33 days later, he didn't wake up one morning. The father went after some of the doctors for improper treatment, medical malpractice, negligence because they didn't do certain tests, which one would suspect they ought to have done under the circumstances. That went nowhere. Father applied for injury under the Vaccine Injury Service Program. It's called the VISP, and was denied. Okay. And all I want to know from the CBC, for all the coverage they have of all things American, the Gwyneth Paltrow trial, Joe Biden coming to Canada, why did they not cover this? But it's even worse than that because CBC doesn't cover it. None of the Canadian legacy media, as far as I know, have covered the father's or the son's rejection from the vaccine injury program, despite what some might think is compelling or contemporaneous evidence. CBC doesn't cover it. And then what does YouTube do when I post a clip on Viva Clips? They take it down for medical misinformation, even though in that clip that they took down, all I did was literally quote Dr. Kieran Moore out of Ontario and an article from the National NCBI, for whatever that stands for, people. Okay, I'm not talking about that anymore. But we're dealing with outright being ignored by the media and then being suppressed by big tech. And it's shocking, and I'm going to be a big, loud pain in the ass about it. The Western Standard covered it, but it's alternative media. CBC doesn't touch it. And then they rely on their big brother, big hand to censor and strike a channel for talking about it. So I want to raise awareness and I want to share, I'll share and shame Canadian media for, that's it, period. There's no medical advice there, but shame on all of you, you absolute disgusting people. Robert, that was my addition. Okay, speaking of disgusting people, those supporting, okay, I was going to make a joke there. I don't know how I feel about TikTok. Banning TikTok. I know the way I feel about it. I want it off my apps of my, iPad, whatever. But that's where I, as a parent, make that decision, and I don't need the government making it for me. As a Chinese Communist Party algorithm application that some argue is being used to manipulate and degrade the West, because by all accounts, or by many accounts, although it's yet to be confirmed, because I don't know who's in China to tell us if they have a different algorithm. There's apparently a different algorithm in China, so they don't get all this brain melting rubbish. They actually get good stuff being promoted to Chinese children in China, but in the West they get recommended mind numbing, mind melting, contagion inducing rubbish. That, and there's issue about what they're doing with data, how they're harvesting it, how they're collecting it, how they're gathering it. Whether or not we have an issue with how the Chinese government designs the app, collects the data, et cetera, there's a move in the US now to ban TikTok and to draft legislation to ban TikTok indirectly, but to do much more, I would say, inadvertently or deliberately, but surreptitiously. The legislation, as far as I understand it, doesn't target TikTok or Chinese Communist Party products. It would authorize, and you'll tell me how, if I'm missing some nuance, it would authorize the government to basically investigate, confiscate, interfere with, alter algorithms that would do any number of things, including, question election interference or question election outcome type stuff. Why? Tell us what the legislation is if I've overly simplified, summarized it. Why couldn't they go after a product of a communist regime as opposed to carte blanche social media? And what's your take on it?
I think based on the laws, the Mises Caucus and others has identified is that this has nothing to do with China, that is a smokescreen to get public support for the idea of basically allowing federal government control and legalized surveillance over social media. that's what the law actually does. The law gets to designate someone a national security threat, and by doing so, do all kinds of things to prohibit and prevent their speech in ways that are deeply problematic. And they're going to try to sucker you into thinking it's about China when it's probably got very little to do with China. As you note, the law itself says nothing about China. So this is a problematic law that should get nowhere. But it's a class. When One-Eyed McCain, the ogre of Congress, the one and only Dan Crenshaw, is promoting these laws, you should be very, very skeptical. This book behind me was about the fact that there was a building up effort to come up with an excuse to wage a military conflict on China, to make China into our permanent factory worker of the world, rather than Trump's approach was to not have military conflict with China and to make America the factory worker of the world. These are two radically different perspectives, but people hear anti-China rhetoric and they assume it's the same objective as the Trumpian objective. It's actually the exact opposite of the Trumpian objective. There's people who want to marshal military conflict with China in order to make them permanently an economic colonial arm of the globalists. And some people get confused about that. They're like, well, how would the Bidens and Pelosi's and all their corruption tied to China, how could they want a war with China? It's because they see China as their colonial attaché, not as their little factory workers supposed to keep their head down, not as a place of independence, politically, economically, or otherwise. There's a reason why George Soros, for the better part of a decade, isn't in bed with China, but is hostile to Xi and wants Xi overthrown. Their view is that China should be working for the globalists, not the other way around. So these are people not to trust. This is a bad law that's being propounded and proposed, and hopefully the smarter, savvier members of Congress will strike it down. There's a temptation to pass these laws because there's some political benefit people think they'll get, similar to like naming things domestic to terrorist. It was a bad idea. We never should have had the legislation. Don't label anybody a terrorist organization. You want to know why? Because it'll always be misused and abused. It's just an invitation to misuse and abuse it. There's already plenty of laws on the books to get at actual terrorists. We don't need to create new ones. We don't need to call the drug cartels domestic terrorists or anything else, because that will just get abused.
Or the Proud Boys in Canada, Robert, have been designated a terrorist group. The Proud Boys, who most people have never heard of because they've never done anything.
Exactly. School protesters were getting labeled domestic terrorists. Part of the reason, as we'll get into, for Missouri v. Biden's success was they were using domestic terrorism as their pretext to monitor so-called misinformation and collude to censor people. And people say we want to declare war against the cartel. Another dumb idea. We don't need to be declaration of wars. We have criminal laws already on the books that are more than sufficient to deal with criminal organizations and operations.
Robert, I'm going to bring up just one chat on Rumble. It's actually a rant on Rumble because it's on point. Glenn Greenwald reported many members of Congress supporting the banning of TikTok have significant investments in Meta and Google. Okay, that's interesting. And I'll just read these all in here. Mandatory carry, keep fighting, get a home, build with a flashbang because it's 9/7. All right, mandatory, thank you very much for the support as always. There are 4 lights. Ukraine 2022 is Poland 1939. And the Irishman Getter. Nice 9 rounds of that hack. I had a fight with journalist Rachel Gilmore. But Robert, look, maybe I'm stupid and just oversimplify things. If you want to target a dangerous product coming out of a communist regime, can you not just target that specific product out of that specific regime?
And they already have laws on the books for this. And they already have provisions for this. Trump was talking about doing it. They don't even need a law to pass it. I mean, anything involving right now, national security involving foreign government operations, those can already be limited. Plenty of ways, did it limit them with Russian sanctions? How much of that has ever been voted on by any parliament anywhere or any Congress anywhere? So there's plenty of laws that are already on the books, plenty of power that's already available to deal with the specific issue of whether China is doing things impermissibly. And if we don't like gathering information, we should be banning it, period. We shouldn't be banning platforms. We shouldn't be banning people's speech. We shouldn't be surveilling it in the first place. So these are dangerous laws sold under bogus pretext. Always be careful when you see any of the war whores show up campaigning for something. Immediately realize something's probably up that's not in your best interest. So we'll see. And then the other case, a bonus case off the top topic tonight, the Second Amendment sanctuary laws that got struck down in Oregon and in Missouri. The reason, quite frankly, some of these laws are what I might start calling DeSantis laws that almost that look good on the books, sell good politically, but legally won't be enforced. And so I knew a mayoral candidate in the South who ran a campaign on the grounds of he would keep abortion out of the city. And merely by making that promise explicitly, he guaranteed its legal permission because of how. And I was like, that's a smart move. It's a political move that can never be enforced, that you never have to suffer the consequences for, but you look like you did a big, great fight. And so some of these sanctuary laws, like the sanctuary laws that work, are the ones that a lot of liberal jurisdictions passed on illegal immigration, where they just prevented commandeering of their local resources for the purposes of federal law enforcement. That's very different. That's how ultimately the sports gambling laws in part got struck down. That's very different than the Second Amendment sanctuary laws that said, we hereby declare we will never allow federal law to be enforced if we think it violates the Second Amendment. Nice political position, but legally you're guaranteeing it's going to get struck down in the courts. That's what Missouri did. They passed a law that had no chance of survival in the courts because it was so bold, so blatant, so broad, and created all kinds of confusion in law enforcement that courts would be sympathetic to. So not a surprise that neither of those Second Amendment sanctuary laws passed. They seemed almost designed to fail legally. A fair number of DeSantis's Florida laws are similar. They'll make a bold stand on something, and then you read the law, and you're like, well, why'd you do that? You could have done, like in the social media context, they could have done what Texas did. Texas law got upheld. Florida's law didn't. Well, why? Because Florida's law would carve out exceptions for Disney and then add somebody else separately elsewhere and then have language in it that, again, if you're a lawyer, it's going to fail. So it raises questions. So that's I'm not surprised, nor do I really disagree with the court's decision in the even though I like people taking the stand for Second Amendment principles. This is invoking, as we'll get into with the California abortion issue, the old fugitive slave laws is the last time we had this degree and scale of dispute between state and federal governments on enforcement of federal law. And I'm sympathetic to the political position, but legally these were crafted in a way that had no chance of survival in the courts.
Now, I'm going to bring this up because it's a good segue to everything. I was going to make the joke, Robert, your tie matches the Rumble Award in the background. Robert, your tie matches the Rumble Award. The TikTok law smells like it's really going after Rumble, locals, etc. What it's going after is empowering the government to make more unilateral decisions based on preserving its own interests, narrative, and, I'll dare say, disinformation. Because it really, as far as I understood, and I've done a bit of research, it had nothing to do with TikTok. And you're talking about like targeting and interfering with, yes, it sounds like going after independent voices and absolutely nothing to do with communist China products, which are available on the open market in North America, which I presume are already, potentially subject to other laws.
Now, speaking of Rumble, it's time to go over to Rumble.
I was going to say that.
We're about to talk about, as I did my introduction to the speech, I was testing the mic at the vaccine injury legal conference, and I was like, test. Epstein didn't kill himself. Test.
The mic was working when you did that, correct?
Oh, yeah. Everybody heard it. Everybody got a kick out of it. So it was just a fun little way to do it. But since we're going to approach into Jeffrey Epstein, probably a good time to hop over to Rumble.
The link is there. And by the way, if anybody sees me doing this from time to time, because it's stupid, I haven't installed the app, so I can't disable the face track function. But okay, link to Rumble is there. And even before we get into any of that, we're going to go from sanctuary city for Second Amendment laws to refuge cities for transgender laws, Robert, in Minnesota. Very quickly. Okay, everyone, head over to Rumble. 3,357 people should make the migration to the free speech platform. If you don't want to go there, go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Ending in 3, 2, 1.